Welcome to Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist. My name is Wendy McClure, and it's time we had a conversation about living in a patriarchy and how that affects our lives. Together, we can make a difference and change the conversation. Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Change the Conversation with the Hopefulist. We have a guest today. It is Emma Long, who is a fellow, can I say raging feminist?
You can say raging. Yes, you can absolutely say raging.
Because now it's okay to be angry. We're allowed to be angry now. We have gone past that point where we're just not going to sit down and be nice about it anymore. So, Emma, thank you for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I have come across Emma on Instagram because, as I said, fellow feminist, she does a fantastic job of explaining things in a way that will shut any pro-birther down in 2 seconds flat. So, what is your IG handle so people can check some of that out?
So it's Smishmortion 101. So SMISHMORTION. So abortion, but with Smish at the front, 101. And it's an education page, legal education page. And you can find me on Instagram or TikTok. I'm a little bit more active on Instagram.
Okay. So today we're going to actually be talking about a topic of women and their careers, what they sacrifice for having a family, whether they're working outside the home or choose to stay inside the home and raise a family. It's one of these things that when men can't spend time with the kids because of work, they're like, oh, he's sacrificed so much for, his family so that, he can provide for them. But when women do the same, they are called bad mothers and selfish. So,
Mhm.
it seems like this should be obvious that there's, some sort of way that this
It
is
should be obvious.
tilted,
Yeah.
but it's not, because again,
Mhm.
this is what I talk about all the time. This is always the way that it's been. So how do we start to make it more obvious and start to change this conversation?
So I think we need to change the conversation, obviously, when we see it, when it gets brought up, and really identify, why is a woman working? Why is she at home? Is it truly what she wants to do? Or is it something that she's being, railroaded is kind of a strong word, but into doing because of circumstances in her life? But I think beyond just changing the conversation, there are just some roots to the whole work-life balance that men and women face that we need to change in terms of a culture on the whole, and topics about how men are just not seen as caregivers. Men are seen as the one to sacrifice their families, and create that void that we expect women to then fill because they're the ones that are working, and they don't really see the disconnect. They're raised to be the provider, but not even necessarily just to be the provider. They're going to be a provider for themselves anyway. So when little boys are raised, and I have a little boy myself, they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be? And if they said a father, they would say, okay, yes, but what else?
Right.
Right? And so if a little boy were to say, I want to grow up and be a dad and a husband, they would say, well, yeah,
Of
but
course.
what else?
Right.
You know? And so, but, and even if they didn't want to be a father or a dad, that what else would still fill their life? They would be an engineer, they would be a doctor, they would be a lawyer, they would be a mechanic, they would be whatever they're going to be, firefighter, police officer, whatever they decide they wanted to be, right? Whether or not they actually have a partner and a family is like an appendage for them
Secondary.
because they're centered in what they are doing, and we don't raise girls the same way. And
Right.
so there are like three things that I think, in terms of like changing the conversation and just kind of like changing the next generation. I know that sounds ambitious, but when we look at how we raise little boys versus little girls, I think there needs to be a consistency across the board. And what I've seen in my generation, having been raised by a feminist, is I was raised to say, don't prioritize a family, prioritize your career because you need to be a strong willed, independent woman, and that's not going to be your identity, which I agree with to an extent. But I was still a little girl who was like, I still want to have love in my life and I still want to have a family. But I also want a career. I
Right.
also want all this stuff too. Why do I have to then say no to that and then yes to a career?
Something a man
And
has never had to struggle with.
exactly.
Yes.
That is something they've never had to struggle with. And so instead of teaching, my generation of young girls who, have been the ones that have gone into universities and gotten careers and we've made all of this success, instead of saying, you don't have to sacrifice your family and wanting children and everything else to have this, they instead tried to raise them like little boys in that, okay, you go do this, you go do your career. You set your sights, your ambitions, you figure out what you want to do, you go for it, you deal with the family later. Okay. You figure out when you want to have a family once you're established, once you have all this. And really, we need to change the way we can't just raise our little girls the way we raised our little boys. We need to change the way we raise the little boys and the little girls. And
I
so they
yes.
both can have families and have, that side of their life that is important to them. So that way, neither of them feel like they're actually sacrificing anything. And the second thing is just the whole work culture we have in this country. Anyway, we have this 40-hour work week and it was designed around there being a breadwinner of the household, right? And somebody would stay home. And even if you took away gender and said either or mom or dad could be the breadwinner, but one of them needed to stay home to take care of the family, it would not be fair to either of the person that stayed home unless they truly wanted to be at home. And I know people who truly they're like, no, this is my calling in life. I love being, taking care of my home, my children. I have that's what gives me satisfaction, fulfillment in life. That's what I love. And if your partner supports you, I want your partner to support you. And I want that to be the lifestyle that makes you happy. Okay. I have a lot of respect for stay-at-home moms. Like a lot of people say, "Do you feel like you're in combat with stay-at-home moms?" They look at me and they say, "How could you be at work so much? How could you be at this?" And I have to bite back my tongue and say, I don't understand how you even want to be home this much. I don't understand how
Right.
you even keep your sanity together because I couldn't. Like, I found it more difficult.
Okay.
And I go to trial 4 to 7 times a year, and I still found being a stay at home mom more difficult.
Oh.
And so that's to really paint a pic. And I only have one child. Okay. So,
Yeah.
like, to really paint the picture of I don't see caregiving as a trait. I see it as a skill. And so if that is the kind of skill, you wouldn't tell somebody who's not good at being a chef to go become a chef because they're not going to be good at it. They don't really like it. Doesn't mean they don't like food. It doesn't mean they don't like to, do these things, but to have that be a 24/7 their entire life, you need to love that. You need to actually want to do that and you need to be skilled at that,
Mhm.
and not everybody is. Actually, I would say a pretty small portion of people are truly equipped to be a 24/7 caregiver for their family. And so what we did, and I think everybody knows this to an extent deep down, because if it was something that people wanted to do, why aren't men doing it? Why aren't men saying, I would rather be at home? That seems like an easier life for me. Why don't you go off and work? Right?
Right.
They also don't want to do it predominantly. Why? And so you ask them why. It's like, well, I have my career and I have my ambition. I'm like, bingo, exactly. What makes you think that we don't?
Right.
And what makes you think that pivoting and giving any part of our life to a career or our ambitions is selfish? But when you do it, it's not, because you're sacrificing it. And then the kind of the third aspect of it is that when we look at men who work and when we look at women who work and the expectations we have of our partner in relation to how we work, um, we have we have men who are going to be working anyway. They're already going to be they're already going to have this whatever they want to do in life, whether they're single, whether they have kids, they're going to be working anyway. They're going to have this career. They take that as a given. Everything else is kind of extra for them. It's help for them. um, people see it as this two-way, man provides, women contribute back by via the household, right? So they see it as this two-way, but it's really not a two-way, because the man would be providing whether it's just for him or whether it's for him and his family. And so it's more of a taking advantage of the situation. And if that is not something that your partner has willfully decided they wanted to do, you are taking advantage of them as well. And that is unpaid labor, that is unpaid. And it's expletive. Like, I just, it frustrates me to high heaven to see women pressured out of the workforce because of the guilt with their children
Right.
or because of guilt not being at home. And I see so many men in the workforce, and I work with a ton of men in the workforce who truly want to be spending more time at home with their children too. They want more time with their family. And then they build this resentment that their career keeps them from that. And then that resentment kind of spills over into, well, I'm providing you this lifestyle. I'm providing you this thing. And this is all, everything I'm doing, this is a sacrifice. And that's where that sacrifice stems from, is this resentment that all of this burden is on them. And I don't even really think it's fair to them. And so if we had this, if we had a better balance of both parents being seen as a caregiver, both parents being seen as a contributor, whether it's working or whether it's not working, but contributing in the saving of expense of otherwise having to pay for things like childcare or house care or stuff like that. You have the caregiver side, and you have the contribute, the side that you contribute, whether that's monetary or however else, right? And so you, when you balance that out, women are looking for someone to share those burdens with. When we look for a partner, we're not looking for somebody to do all of that for us. We're looking for somebody to share that responsibility. When a man looks for a partner, he's looking for somebody to do that for him
Right.
so he can focus elsewhere. And so the motives are different, our perceptions are different. And I don't know a single working woman who's like, no, I would abandon my family in a heartbeat if I could just, go off and travel and be and do all of these crazy things. And I don't care about, we all want to balance our families. We all want the time with our families. We all need a better work-life balance. And the patriarchy does not help men in this sense by overloading them with that responsibility. Just build up that resentment and have them then see it as a sacrifice that women then need to fill the void for.
Right.
And if we can start to pivot away from that and start to really kind of see our partners and see our families as an extension of ourselves, not an appendage of ourselves, not a tool, but just an extension of ourselves. That my success is my husband's success, my husband's success is my success, my happiness, his happiness, our children. We all function as a unit, and we all need more time together, and we all need to feel fulfilled. And knowing that motherhood and being a wife is not enough for me to feel fulfilled in life, nor is it for my husband, we work with it that way. And instead of shaming people and saying, well, how could it not be? How could your children not be everything to you? Trust me, my child is everything to me. Okay, that's not the point.
Right.
Because he is everything to me, I am trying to give the best that I can.
The best of you.
And the best of me
Yes.
too.
Yes.
Exactly. I tell people all the time that if I was around my family 24/7, they would be getting the best side of me and the absolute worst side of me way more often than they currently get the worst side of me. And my thing is like, if I'm going to work, if I'm going to have this career and I'm going to be separate from my family, the time my family gets needs to be the best part of me they can get. They deserve that. It's like they don't deserve just my presence,
Right.
because I wouldn't want to be around me 24/7. Okay. So like,
But
that's
you
not
are,
something
Emma.
like I truly like I don't have the patience for that kind of lifestyle. And I know people it's they do. That's a trait of theirs. That's a personality. They have that kind of, I don't, like we need to just be honest with ourselves of what we can and can't do, and not feel so pressured to satisfy the standards of society as opposed to what actually works for our lives.
Well, and you,
So,
as you were describing some of it, we talk about patriarchy, and a lot of people think that the opposite of patriarchy, the matriarchy would just be the opposite of patriarchy, which is not
right.
true. It's what you were
No.
just describing. We would be groups. We would be looking to fulfill needs on a family basis, on a group basis, community basis,
Mhm.
rather than an individual basis. And that's
Mhm.
the essence behind a matriarchy. Um, I often say that men are victims of the patriarchy as well. And it's just what you're talking about.
Same.
They feel like that, they're having to sacrifice, and it built up this bitterness. But at the same time, really, the providing is all they have to do at this point. They're not protecting
Right.
us. They're not, well, and the procreating, well, that's the fun part.
Right.
So, what
For them, it's the fun part, you
right.
know?
They have nothing left. I mean, so I really don't take it as easy on them when it comes to the providing as you do, because I'm like, you know what? That's all you got to do. Suck it up and do it.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I mean, it's very disproportional. It
Yes.
is like the expectations on either side, and so they try to downplay it so much
Yeah.
and say like, "Oh, well, if you get to stay home, you don't have to work." And I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah.
stop right there. Stop right there. There is not a single mom who doesn't work. I hate this. I hate the term working moms and non-working moms. There isn't a single mom
Right.
who does not work. And worldwide, we have almost $11 trillion worth of domestic labor. Okay? That's just if you had paid somebody else to do this for you,
Absolutely.
not the opportunity cost of what you might otherwise want to be doing instead.
Right.
And so there's $11 trillion annually of unpaid domestic labor, and you're going to tell us that those moms don't work?
Well, they don't
I
value it. They
They
that's
don't value it.
that's the
They don't
problem
have
is
a dollar value
they
to it.
don't believe that it would be $11 trillion. They don't believe that.
Mhm,
And I've seen the reactions to these types of surveys that show how much it would cost to hire someone to do all the things that a woman would do in the home. But
mhm,
to your point, I actually had a conversation with somebody on TikTok not that long ago talking about how when women wanted to work, we wanted to work to get financial freedom, to be able
mhm.
to have our own money, and to, because we all know that that's when you have choices, is when you have your own money.
Money. Yeah.
And I had somebody respond with, well, you guys are the ones that wanted to work. And my response was, no, we wanted to get paid for work.
Yeah,
Because, like, as you
exactly.
said, we are working all the time,
All the time.
all the time. And
Mhm.
it's not a 9 to 5 job.
No,
Who's making the dinner and then cleaning the dishes and then doing the bathroom and doing the laundry?
it's
Like,
not a 9 to 5 job.
no,
There's no lunch breaks. There's no mandatory 15-minute
no
breaks.
sick
There's
days.
no PTO or vacation time or anything like that. There's no sick time,
Yeah.
okay? Like, it is not a 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
That's why I hated it so much. I could not be a stay-at-home. I have mad respect for it because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And there aren't very many things, I mean, not trying to like inflate my head here. There have not been very many things in my life I truly couldn't do.
Hmm.
You know, if I set my mind to it, truly couldn't do. That was one of them.
Well, and
Okay, because it was
these are the
exactly.
conversations we need to have. It's okay.
Yeah,
It is okay to
exactly.
feel that way. But so many women are shamed when they
Hmm.
say things like that they're afraid to say it. So
Exactly.
I applaud you for saying it.
Yes, and I'm very vocal about that because more women need to say it.
More women
And
need to say a
and
lot
a
of
lot of
stuff.
them don't even realize they need to say it because they have been shamed to the extent that it doesn't occur to them that that's even where it's stemming from.
Right.
I've seen I've had friends of mine, I know tons of mom friends, my kids in elementary school, and they're just like, I'm just so frustrated by this and I'm frustrated by that and I'm exhausted here and I'm exhausted there. And if you bring up, do you like doing this? And they go, oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, of course I do. Of course I
You're not
do.
allowed to
I'm
say
like,
no. Yeah.
you can tell me if you don't.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna judge you.
Hmm.
Like I truly won't. Like I mean, it's up to you to change your life. Okay. Like I'm not if you tell me you don't like to do this, I'm not going to come stomping into your home and upend everything that you have. But you can be honest about it. We
Hmm.
need these spaces to be honest about it. And they don't even want to. they don't even want to go there
Well,
because
and
they've just been so conditioned
that's
to.
I was just going to say use the word that's the conditioning we've gotten since the time we were little girls is we're afraid to say the truth. We are afraid that um we're going to be judged and shamed and that we're not real, women or mothers if we say anything to disparage the institution.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And
So,
then you never fix the institution if you don't bring up the problems.
exactly.
You have to address those problems to be able to make changes that make things better.
Yeah.
And so if you don't address it, nothing
Yeah.
changes. Nothing changes, it just continues to get worse.
And that's the status quo. Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's talk about you. You mentioned opportunity costs when it comes to women working, not working. So women who decide to stay at home, they do lose out on a lot of earning power and moving up that ladder of success. But when a
Mhm.
divorce happens, everyone kind of is like, well, she can just go get a job now. And expect her to be able to support herself and however many kids with maybe, some help from, the man in the family. But they're looked upon as if they're looking for child support or, God forbid, alimony. Well, she's
Right.
just a moocher. She's just a gold digger. So let's talk about the real effects of leaving the workforce for even just 6 or 7 years to get your kids
Mhm.
into school.
Mhm. So this is something that I bring up to people a lot in terms of trying to really wrap your mind around what the full opportunity cost of it is. So, and what it takes to, especially in a day and age where it takes a lot to just be successful enough to support yourself. I mean, we all need to be honest with that fact that, like, even if I was just supporting me and my son here in Los Angeles, right? And I make a lot of money. Okay. I'm in a high paying field. If it were just up to me to support, we wouldn't quite be living paycheck to paycheck, but we would still be um, very conscientious
Okay.
about money. Okay. And that is with a very high paid professional position. Okay. That took 8 years of school. That took all, I mean, I could go into the journey there, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
And so when we look and just be able to say, oh, well, you should be able to just go get a job and support yourself. How?
Right.
Be realistic about how, especially when you've been outside of the workforce for so long. Um, and we don't understand that opportunity cost compounds over time. And so a lot of times when women look at, they'll look at a daycare bill and they'll say, based on my current earnings right now in the job that I currently have, and then I'm going to subtract the amount that childcare costs. I'm left with not very much left over, and therefore that net value is not worth paying for the childcare, and therefore I should leave work and stay home instead. And then they don't understand that that cost compounds. What they just forfeited might have seemed small at the time, and it will continue to compound the longer you stay out of the
So
workforce.
let's talk about that
And
example a little bit more. Let's talk about the fact that somebody's making, say, $25,000 a year, and
mhm,
the childcare costs are $18,000 a year. And
mhm,
so they're like, well, this isn't worth it. I'm just going to stay home. So in five
mhm.
years, you know, how many raises have they missed out on, and the promotions that they could have gotten? Like, this is what people are not thinking about.
Right. That is exactly what people are not thinking about. I can use my own story here. This is actually fits perfectly here. So I got pregnant in college, my senior year of my undergrad, with my son. And I was 9 units away from finishing school. So very close to finish on top of the units that I was already enrolled in at the time that I found out I was pregnant.
Okay.
My husband had 2.5 years to finish school. Now he's an engineer, he's highly intelligent. Academics do not fly with him. Like he struggles really hard with the world of academia, especially when we were both working full time, going to school at night. We were hustling, grinding through college, right? We didn't have any extra support. We were living in a tiny little studio. From the bottom to the top, right?
Uh huh.
And so at the time, I had 9 units to finish once I finished the semester I was in. He had like 60. Okay. Like he had a lot more. And I didn't want him to drop out of school. I wanted us to just keep going, keep plugging through, full force ahead. We would figure it out as we went. He did not tell me that he dropped out of school initially. He dropped out of school. He picked up a day shift plus a night shift. He was working 85 hours a week because around 5 months into my pregnancy, I almost miscarried. The stress of it all, my blood pressure was high. Everything was crazy. He said, I need you. You are the one that needs to finish school here. You are so close to being done, way closer than I am. So I'm going to keep a roof over your head. I'm going to keep your tuition paid. I'm just going to work. I'm going to go back to school later. Right. So I finished school. I got my degree. And um, the first job, just to relieve the pressure on him of working that many hours a week, because he had missed my entire pregnancy. He was missing our son's first year of life because he was just constantly at work. I was ready to just get whatever job I could get in the field, in the legal field, so that we had benefits. I had a full-time income, whatever that meant, right? The first job I got was actually for the firm I work for now as a front desk receptionist. And it only paid $45,000 a year. And when I got the daycare bill to put my son in daycare, I sat in my car and cried because I said, I just went through hell trying to finish school. And this is going to be my entire take home pay. Daycare is going to be my entire take home pay. It's not going to make us any different. There's going to be no difference. And I sat down with my husband about it. I was like, do I just wait until he starts kindergarten and take care of him and you work and and he's going, I can't keep working like this for 5 years. I need to have the opportunity to be able to go back to school, to be able to finish my degree, to be able to get ahead in my career.
Right.
He's like, you can't leave the workforce for 5 years and put the degree that we just hustled through and sacrificed all this stuff for on hold. That's going to compound. That $45,000 could easily turn into a lot more over the course of that 5 years. If you start at that, then what are you going to do then?
Right.
It's going to kick you back and you can't replace time. So we just did it. I went to work. I paid for it. I had virtually no net pay, but I got promoted 6 times in 5 years.
Wow.
Was able to continue to go to school, was able to fund his degree so he could go back and finish what he needed to get up in his thing. We went from making, I guess our gross at the time, dual income was around 90 together. And 7 years down the line, we're at around 290 together. Huge.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
if I had just started now and we had started from scratch then, we would be, not just me, he would be so far behind.
Because he wouldn't have had the chance to go back to school.
He would not have had the
Right.
chance to go back to school. And so we have always kind of, when we've made those decisions, it's what makes the most sense right now. What is the least amount of opportunity cost we're going to incur right now?
This is what made me so angry this past summer when Ron DeSantis in Florida decided that he was going to eliminate permanent alimony
Mhm.
from the state. And there was no grandfathering in. If you were in part of a deal where you got permanent alimony, it was just going to go away. And,
Right.
it became this joke. My own husband made the joke, and I even gave him the opportunity to realize what he was saying before I pounced. Because he's like, yeah, all the guys are like, whoa, this is the best decision ever. And all the women are like, we got to go get a job now. And I looked at him and I went, what did you say?
Oh,
And then he repeated it, and I'm like, ah! I went off. He's like, and then
oh
he's like,
my God.
oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, I wasn't thinking, and I'm like, no, you weren't thinking. But
No,
yeah,
you were not thinking.
but this is
Yeah.
the thing: is people don't think about those things that we were just talking about. Not only that, but when it comes to settlements, she might have given up her part of the house because she was going to get permanent alimony. That this was what she was going to depend on for the rest of her life. And then these
Right.
people are just like, oh, well, look, Shelky, you got to go get a job now. Again, like, we're just the bad guy, regardless of the situation. And it
Yeah.
infuriates me.
It infuriates me too, because when you look, when you look at it, if a woman were to lose her husband unexpectedly, and like he died,
Right.
they would not be saying the same thing.
You are
They would not be
absolutely right.
saying they would not be saying, "I bet you gotta go get a job now, huh?"
You're right.
Like, if you were to lose your partner in another way, they would not have that same attitude.
Yeah.
And so I see it as this underbelly of blaming women for the divorces themselves,
Mm.
blaming the women for their marriage not working. And they still do not shift that same blame or even just equally distribute that blame to the husband to say that, oh, well, you screwed up your marriage. Now you got to pay her.
Yeah.
Sucks for you. They don't say it for them, they say it for the woman.
Right.
And that makes me insane because it's like you wouldn't say that to a widow who lost her husband.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You wouldn't say, bet you got to go get a job now. You'd be saying, oh, what do you need? You'd have a village, you'd want support. Like there would be compassion there for that loss of income. And people would suddenly start to see, wow, you were home with your children for 12 years. You sacrificed your career. This man, put a roof over your head and now you have to start over and you've lost him. And that's so heartbreaking and everything. But if it's a divorce and it's like all of a sudden it doesn't matter that you sacrificed your career for 12 years and you set yourself back and all of this stuff, they now look at you like, well, why didn't you have that independence? Why didn't you have that built in? Why didn't you have your safety net?
Yeah.
That's why
Well,
you pressured me out of doing it to begin with, because I would have
society.
been seen as selfish for having a job.
Right. And to take that even a little bit further, women are considered so selfish that, if they leave a marriage or they step out of a marriage, having an affair or something happens, they're horrible, selfish, ridiculous women. But if a man does it, well, she didn't keep herself up. What was going on at home that she did? She obviously did not take care of her man. I mean, so like
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those situations where, again, no matter what happens, the woman is the one to be blamed.
Yep, absolutely. And we can see that with single dads versus single moms too. They praise single dads as, oh my God, what happened to your wife? I can't believe she left you guys. What mother does that? And then you see single moms and they'll bring up like, oh, well, this huge percentage of crime is related to people who are raised by single moms. Or,
They
they,
have to be
they
called
demonize single moms. I'm like, how could you
uh,
possibly demonize the parent who stayed?
right.
Okay.
We need to start calling them children with absentee fathers.
Yes. Because you cannot villainize the person who stayed.
I
Okay.
know,
Like,
but they're managing to do it.
and I don't, that makes me, I mean, I grew up with a single mother, and that makes me it makes my blood
Oh
boil.
yeah.
It makes my blood boil to see that, yes, a lot of my childhood was spent alone. She was working, she was in school, she was this. I had to fend for myself a lot. There was a lot of unfair things. I mean, but that was the reality of the circumstance. I never looked at my mom and said, what did you do to make dad cheat on you? You know, that's never even something that crossed my mind.
Right.
That's
Yeah, and this is what we're up against, and this is what makes it so hard is I feel like when I point things like this out, people just roll their eyes at me and act like I'm being ridiculous. Well, that's ridiculous. They're called single mothers, and we know that this is what happens. And I'm just like, no, you're looking at it wrong.
You're looking at it wrong.
Right.
You're looking at it from a completely biased point of view. And then they'll
And
say, well, you're looking at it from a biased point of view that single moms are just these, morally superior. And I'm like, they are morally superior. They're the ones who stayed with their children. You know, how could you contest that they were the morally superior one? Okay. Like,
that's patriarchy.
that's patriarchy.
That in a nutshell is what patriarchy does. It is all about making the lives of men easier and comfortable, and making sure that they don't get blamed for anything. And
Hmm.
these are the conversations that we need to be having in order to bring it more out in the open, so that people stop rolling their eyes at me and make me want to punch them in the face.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're trying to make their lives easier, and the sales pitch of it is, if our lives are easier, your life is easier, right? We provide for you, we protect you, you make our lives easier, you get to reap the residual benefit from it. And I'm like, you are completely ignoring that we are entirely dependent on you deciding to do that. There's
Hmm.
nothing holding you accountable to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Especially when you start to do away with things like the alimony,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
What is there that's going to hold them accountable to anything in the structure they set up to say that, oh, well, if our lives are easier, if we're well taken care of, then you are well taken care of and everything is better, if there isn't some sort of mechanism of accountability to make sure,
Well,
right?
and there isn't, because how many men have just left their wives after, 20 years to trade them in for a newer model? And then again,
Yeah.
this woman has been home for 20 years, not able to make any money. And then she's just booted out and expected to pick up, the pieces and make a decent living for herself and potentially children.
Yeah. I it's insanity to me. The expectations are absolute insanity. And like the more we talk about it, the more we bring it up, the more we call it out, the more obvious how insane it is. I mean, I have talked to some very, you know, patriarchy apologists, like women should be at home, men work, and you start to just call out these things that say, same person who told me, women really should be at home, men should work. It's the best setup for everything. I know admitting it's a sacrifice, willfully admitting it's a sacrifice. I know it's a sacrifice. I know not all women want to do it, but it's for the greater good of, society or
We
whatever
always
else.
have
That's
to
what
sacrifice for the greater good.
exactly. We
Right.
always have to
It's
sacrifice for
only
the greater good.
us.
But just to entertain the concept, I say, so what? So, you've brought up before when, a woman is a single woman who has children, you ask, why did she not have some sort of safety net or whatever in terms of providing for that child? I said, how do you expect her to have the safety net? How do you expect her to have the ability to provide for her child on her own if you didn't want her to work in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, I I didn't quite completely change his view on the whole system of the patriarchy,
But you
but
made them
he did
think.
come to the ultimate conclusion that it's like, okay, I do see the value in women having means of being able to provide for themselves outside of just, he didn't see it in terms of value to society as what we can contribute to society, but as a personal safety net for themselves. Okay, yeah, that would make sense. If I were in those shoes, I would want to have a thing. And I'm like, you're getting there slowly. But I'm glad that calling out that,
Baby
like,
steps.
complete disconnect was like "Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way,"
But there's
you
so
know?
many people that look at it like that. And that's what I really am trying to highlight and make people aware of, is that the system is ridiculous, and it has been ridiculous for years, and we have just taken it as law, taken it
Mhm.
for set in stone. Well, this is just the way things are. Well, the way things are suck for women.
Yes, they do. They absolutely suck for women. And and then, their cop out for that is, "Oh, well, you just need to look at it differently.
Mhm.
You just need to accept it. You just need to, you know, learn to enjoy it.
Being shamed and demonized. We just have to learn how to enjoy that.
You just have to learn how to enjoy it."
Okay.
I Yeah,
Okay.
no
So,
thanks.
we've we're running out of time here, so I wanted to get this last question in. We've had a narrative of women having it all for decades, which has, of course, made us medicate ourselves and guilt ourselves and shame ourselves. Um,
And unalive ourselves, like, I mean, the
yeah,
the rate of that
yeah,
before financial autonomy,
yeah,
eh,
yeah.
oh
It's
god.
been crazy, and the fact that we're moving backwards towards that is
Oh my god, it's
scary as
terrifying.
hell. But we talk about this, and this is one of the things that I try to point out a lot, is we can't have it all. This Stepford wives type thing where everything is wonderful, and we are expected to do too much, and that's why we are pushing back now, and we're talking
Mhm,
about emotional labor and the physical labor and the mental labor and all of that kind of stuff. And what is it that men have to start to understand more to get where we're coming from? They don't, like, you bring up emotional labor to them and they're like, "What?" We're talking about making the doctor's appointments. We're talking about planning the vacation. We're talking about getting the
mhm,
tickets for the airlines. We're talking about making his doctor appointment. We're talking about contacting his work to let them know that he's going to be out early one day because he has a dentist appointment. We do all of this.
mhm.
And they just think, again, because it's the way it's always been, well, that's what women do.
Yeah. They
So,
think that that's what women do. And I'm gonna figure out the best, kind of the best way to put this. It's never been something that they even had to do.
right.
And so, and I mentioned before, when women are looking for a partner, they're looking to share this labor. They're not looking to offload this labor. But I wouldn't say that men are actually offloading this labor because it was never on them to begin with.
Oh, and I agree with you 100%. And that's, I feel a little bit bad for men in the sense that they really do have a lot coming at them all at once. When it
Hmm.
comes to trying to be more equitable in relationships and all. But that's what I guess I'm asking is how do we get this across to them since it's never been on their radar that
Right.
we do everything. We have always done everything. And how do we get it across to them that this all takes mental thinking. This all takes, um, what's the word I'm looking for? You just mental or decision fatigue. It's
Yeah.
we get
Executive function,
yeah,
decision fatigue. That is it. It is truly one of my worst triggers is just, never being able to ask somebody else for anything, but everybody always being able to ask me for
right,
everything
right.
because I'm the mom, because I'm the wife. And my husband's a very good guy, and we share a lot of the labor, and he cooks, he cleans, he does stuff like that, and he doesn't expect a gold star for any of it. And so I think I truly don't know how to get it across to men who have been just indoctrinated by this idea that, oh, if you get the right kind of woman, they will just take care of all of this for you. That's what they're seeking out. I can't fix that. That's what they're looking for. They're running their lives as if they're some CEO of a company, and their family are like people
They're
who
employees.
are their employees. And
Yes.
so when their employees start to ask for things like benefits and recognition and stuff like that, they see it as something they lose by
Right.
providing it for them. And so they don't want to because they resent that, and they don't want to lose out. What they need to be able to see is that my happiness should be your happiness should be mine. Okay, my success should be your success should be mine. And so when we look at this more centered view of a family, you giving me the consideration in that I am burdened with the most emotional labor, have to make most of the executive decisions in the family on a day-to-day basis. Um, like when you look at considering that, when you look at it can't be looked at as, oh, let me throw you a bone. Let me do you this favor. You're not doing me a favor. This is all loops back to you. All of it loops, it's a certain, and it can truly be a really great positive feedback loop if we did it the right way. And I've used my story again with my husband and myself in terms of our career and everything else is, the way I helped him helped me. The way he helped the way he helped me ultimately helped him. You know what I mean? We bounced off of each other, and it was a positive feedback loop that led to our success. And that was in terms of career success, but that can be in terms of home life success. That can be in terms of, just sharing the balance of a livelihood, because there's so much more to livelihood than just getting a paycheck and just coming home with the money, than just being able to buy the things that you need and that you want, and go on the vacations and stuff like that. There's so much more to a day-to-day basis that men have just taken for granted as being taken care of for them.
Right.
And um I it's tempting to just be like, let's take away what you take for granted.
Let's go on strike.
Let's go on strike. Okay. Like there have been, when we have like staff appreciation days, because I started in legal as a staff member, as a receptionist, I was a secretary, I was a paralegal, and, worked my way up from there. Right. And the staff appreciation, they'll say all kinds of things. They'll say, um, we couldn't do our jobs without you. We couldn't, you really just the arteries of all of this, right? But they truly do not understand how little of their jobs they could do without that. Okay. And so I have challenged so many people who have gone to law school, come out of law school, have just always been attorneys, have never worked on that side of the legal field to say, I dare you to go a week, just a week, and do not hit up your secretary for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do not hit up your they probably have other attorneys on their desk or whatever to do other work, but don't hit them up for anything and see how much more work lands on your desk in the process. And you will actually get an idea of the scope of what they do. And so I would almost challenge, men who are just don't understand, but are not necessarily like lost causes, will never understand. They just don't understand because they have never experienced this. They have never had the expectation of actually executive managing their lives to say, your wife is not going to do anything for you for XYZ amount of time, and see how that pans out and see how much more work lands on their desk. And truly, there are some things that people cannot fathom until they actually experience the load of it.
Yeah.
And that would just be for them managing it for themselves.
Right.
Now, beyond that, now manage it for your wife too.
Or for
Now go
kids.
another week or another month and do everything for her as well. And see how much of a load and how exhausting that is. My husband had that when I had surgery. He was cooking every night. He was doing all of the cleaning. He was doing all the things, managing everything for me, and just truly exhausted by all of it. And he has always been a great guy in terms of no, and I think part of it is because we started life together. We've been together since high school. We started life together. We've always kind of just toggled that. He was never looking for somebody to take care of him after he got established. Now I need the wife at home or whatever.
Right.
He's like, you're my partner, you're my best friend. We're in this together. That's how we've always been. But not up until very, very recently was he like, holy crap,
You do a
this
lot
is
around here.
insanity. Like this is truly like we try to manage our own and we try to help each other out when we need it, but to fully manage the life of somebody else when they can't. I mean, I was shocked by how much of my medical history he actually knew, by how he was able to advocate, no, you need to give her an MRI, you need to do this. She's had issues before. I'm insisting on this when I couldn't. And I was like, honey, like, wow.
I'm impressed.
So many people don't, and I'm not trying to like, these are things that should just be a given when you're in a partnership. And the fact that we're even shocked that somebody was able to do that says a lot about where we're at,
Right.
you know?
The
And I'm not
bar
going to
is
be
very
like, oh,
low.
the bar is so low. And for me to be able to say like, wow, I'm surprised you met that bar. And he's like, you're surprised I met that bar.
Ah,
Like he almost took that offensively.
yes.
He's like, it's a low bar to me. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't understand
How
that is
low?
beyond the scope of what
Yeah.
most partners would even be able to do.
And this is the last thing I'm going to ask you about before I let you go. But have you seen the video that has gone viral of the UPS driver talking about how he doesn't help his wife because it's his job too? Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, yeah, he's
I've
been
seen
on
that one.
Good Morning America. Like he's had all of the like it's again what you said, gold stars. This guy is just trying to, and even he's even come out with another video saying, "Okay, I didn't ask. Nobody even asked me like if I was even married. Like they just took my
Yeah.
word for it that this is how I run my household." And again, they're just making him to be this hero because he says that he contributes, somewhat equally to the household chores.
And it's like you're not a hero. And the whole point of that video was him saying that doesn't make you a
Right,
hero.
exactly.
He's like, that's just a given. I'm not helping you. I'm doing it. It's not to imply that you're helping is to imply that it's your job.
Exactly.
And so like that's the whole point of the video. But yes, it's insane to me. It's just like, oh my God, a man like this is just like, that's what they should
Right.
be.
Yes.
And so
Exactly.
And then you have the other videos of just men are like, where are the women who used to make their husbands lunches and who used to blah 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 blah.
Yeah, but I bet
And
they expect her to go to work every day and share half the finances now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. So
Yeah.
that's what it is. They want a
Mhm.
traditional wife, but one that works.
Because they want to reap the benefit of it. I've asked my husband, just jokingly, I said, what, I'm getting really tired. What if I just, left my career and stayed at home? He's like, no, the fuck you won't. Like, it's like the amount of sacrifice both of us have put into your career and just you loving you. I do love my career, but
Yeah.
he's like, I benefit from that. We have a great livelihood largely because of that. Okay.
Right.
Like, no, I do not want you to be at home just to take care of me. Like, what? I'm gonna take a 55-60% blow to our annual income. No,
Right.
thank
Yeah.
you.
And I don't blame them. But
Same
but
here.
we're blamed. But we're blamed when it's the opposite. We should be willing to date a man that can just pay the light bill. But I'm gonna let you go because I have a feeling we're never gonna get off this call if we don't. So Emma, thank you so much for joining us. Tell me again your handles for Instagram, TikTok, all the places.
So Instagram and TikTok, Smishmortion 101, SMISHMORTION
Thank you
101.
for joining me in this
Again, on Instagram
conversation.
and TikTok. I also have a
Together,
blog, but
we're
it's plugged
better.
on my Instagram
Please visit my
page, so
website
you
at
can click on that.
hopefulist.com and
Check
remember
out her
to hit that
Instagram.
subscribe
Some
or
amazing
follow button.
stuff.
And I love it so much. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Okay, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you next week.